Further, it's like 7. Everything feels like it's rushing. It's light. But they're moving slow. Yes. Especially if you're not company. But I think it was now it's
Yeah. Yep. Good. That's great. An A?
Yes.
Awesome. That's really awesome. Thanks for sharing that. Sorry it wasn't more helpful, but it's like there's so many ways to go with open-ended things, right?
Okay, we're all live.
I like that a little bit.
Good evening. I'll call the meeting to order. We'll do a roll call. We have trustees that are on virtual, so I'll have them begin first.
Hi, Vice President Trustee Gauze,
Trustee Robinson,
Trustee Marlowe,
Paige Barnum, Vice President Finance.
Trustee Allen,
Trustee Rush.
Trustee Masinski.
President Pryor. Trustee West will be a little late, maybe 10, 15 minutes. So we'll continue. Thank you. Is there any public comment? All right, so tonight we have a staff presentation from the head of public safety. Would like to join us, Matthew? Thank you.
Yes, Matt Leibowitz started with us in October of 2024, excuse me. Hi, Matt.
Thanks. Good evening. Thanks for having me. I started, yes, in October 21st of this year. It's been so far almost 3 months, and it has definitely been an exciting and adventurous journey so far. So I am very thankful. A couple of things I wanted to touch on since I've come aboard with Albany Public Library. Initially, when I first got on board, I met with all the branch managers and all the CECs since they were going, they were going to be under my charge. We did sit down. I went over and I wanted to talk with them. I wanted to hear about their concerns regarding public safety. I wanted to hear about things that they felt were going well, what was good about their branches, why they loved their specific branch, or why their branch was better than the other branches. As well as, like I said, I wanted to hear about their concerns that they had about public safety in their specific branch. Not only did I meet with them over those initial weeks that I got here, I did have opportunities to go out, staff themselves. I wanted to hear from the clerks. I wanted to hear from the librarians. I wanted to hear from everybody that worked for the Albany Public Libraries. I wanted to know about their concerns. And again, I wanted to hear what they thought. And the things that they thought were great about coming to work here. And over the last couple of months, got to know them pretty well. I will say that you have a large group of very dedicated, hardworking, knowledgeable employees that work for the Albany Public Library. And it was, after getting to know them and speaking with them, it really became important to me to make sure that their experience here at work was something that they felt really good and safe about. I conducted initial risk assessments at each branch. I sat and observed as a little fly on the wall at each branch before anybody really got to know me, so that I could just kind of sit there and take it in. Some of the things I saw, the staff's concerns were valid. They were completely, they validated it by watching. Each and every day, I review all the incident reports that are written. Along with doing that, I countless hours of video to go along with it, so that I can get who are into one of our branches to the time they leave. What this allows me to do is just get a better sense of, excuse me, I'm sorry, I have a little cough. Get a better sense of how it started and how we can better manage it if something like this was to happen again. So I get it from the very beginning of the time the person walks into the time they leave. And then I will go out to that branch and talk staff, and we'll review it. See things that we did well, things that we improve on. Some of the other things that I have been doing is doing all the branch evacuation plans and the procedures that go along with it. It's quick when I first got here to realize that not everybody was quite sure what we're supposed to do or where they're supposed to go in case of an emergency fire. That was scary. Want to make sure that everybody was. Along with that, I've been going around looking at all the red bags that we have in each branch, several red bags. I don't know if everybody's aware of that, but they're evacuation bags. And I wanted to make sure that each bag was set up with the way, with all the proper equipment. Staff knew what was in the bags and what the bags were actually for in case of an emergency. So we've been reviewing that. Again, I've been doing a lot of coaching with our CECs. This was kind of, my positions as being a new position. They haven't had anybody actually kind of just take them or take the lead and kind of show them how we want to do things. So again, just give a better experience, not only for staff, but for our patrons that come in. I want everybody when they come in to, they cross over that front door and they step inside, that they know that this is a warm, safe space where they can get, whatever services they need. We can help them, assist them with whatever we can do to make their day better. I've been establishing or trying to establish as many outside relationship and partnerships that we can. Joseph's House has been one that we have had now coming here. They come by twice a day to this branch. They started going over to the Howe branch. Hopefully shortly they'll start making their way over to Arbor Hill as well, but they come by to check in with our patrons to see if they can provide any services. We have them kind of park right up front there, right in that curb cut. Works out really well for us. People know that they're here, and it just keeps people from congregating in that little curb cut area right outside the makerspace window, where it seems to become a hangout sometimes. I've been working with our neighborhood engagement officers and the police to try to have foster a better relationship between us, as well as fire and EMS. Considerable number of our calls are also. I want, working with them as another partner, so that they know that when we're calling, it is a risk. Luckily, I have almost 20 years in EMS, so when I talk to them, we have that rapport. I have conducted our first CEC meeting on December 6th. We went over some training, some things that we worked on effective communication, because I know we're big on de-escalation, and I love de-escalation, but if we cannot communicate, de-escalation doesn't always work. It starts with communication and proper communication with our patrons. Our next meeting is actually this Friday. We'll be going over some other things. We'll be reviewing incidents at that meeting. We'll go over some procedures, things that are coming up, as well as now dealing with, effectively communicating with our patrons, that we're better, to, equipped to handle those situations when they arise. As of January, I'm the chair of the safety committee. Excited about that. And that's pretty much all I. You.
Anyone have any questions? All right, thank you. Thank you for that thorough presentation. Seems like you hit the ground running.
He already knows most staff names, which is also pretty impressive, in my view.
On to the minutes. Anyone have any questions? As you know, December, so there's kind of two sets of minutes from November. Well, one set from November, because we didn't have our meeting in December,
I think there's also a set from the special
a
meeting.
special meeting. If there isn't any questions, we'll move on to the operating register. Any questions on the consent agenda at all?
I just want to say thank you for adding the program note, helpful.
Good. I was wondering how that worked out. So thanks for the feedback.
Thank you. All right, so anyone virtually have any questions regarding the consent agenda?
No questions from me.
No question.
If not, we'll
No,
go ahead. Okay, thank you. We'll go ahead and proceed to the anybody would like to make a motion to accept check the consent agenda, check registry and the capital fund check registry?
I move that we accept the consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Trustee Gauze? Trustee Gauze, are you there?
Sorry, I was trying to unmute. I just, one abstention. Sorry.
Did we hear from Trustee Marlowe? Okay, Trustee Robinson? All right, so all in favor, except for one exemption, one extension. Finance memo?
Good evening. So similar to the consent agenda, the reports for this meeting cover October and November 2024. November was 42% of the way through our 2025 fiscal year. So support and revenues overall were in line with the approved budget, with interest income continuing to trend over budget. Our expenditures overall were in line with the approved budget, with admin, miscellaneous, and IT costs continuing to trend over budget, along with occupancy costs. I'll turn it over to.
Okay, like Tom said, there's 2 months worth of reports here covering October and November. So looking at the October reports, the National Grid bills for October totaled just over 11,000 compared to just over 15,000 in October 2023. I believe October was the last full month before we began the LED lighting installation. So unfortunately, I won't be reporting on those National Grid savings going forward. And continuing with October, the total salary expense in October was about 369,000 compared to about 327,000 in October of 2023. And moving on to November, total salary expense in November was almost 380,000 compared to just over 334,000 in November 2023, an increase of about 13.5%. And then also looking at the building repair maintenance expenses for November, the majority of that 32,000 was related to a Metasys upgrade of about $10,000, and then also elevator repair work at the Howe branch of about $10,000. And if anyone has any questions on any of these reports, please feel free to ask.
I'm sorry, I just missed, what was the work at the Howe branch?
There was elevator repair work done
Okay.
at Howe in November.
Okay, yes.
Okay, we'll move on to the capital fund. Capital fund report. Is that all included?
Mm-hmm.
Yep, it's all covered.
Okay.
It's part of the finance memo.
All right, what about the cash and investment summary? Anyone has any questions in regards? All right, moving on. Any trustees reporting? Or any upcoming events? Yes, sir.
So we didn't have our December meeting, so this would have been a call out for Ben. But I had attended the Rethinking Thanksgiving at Delaware Ave and ran into Paige. So I'm just call out, but it's really good. My partner and I we were talking about it afterwards, and like it was interactive. We were quizzing people at Thanksgiving, like, did you blah blah blah? And so that was much fun. So that was good. And the other thing that I have as private citizen, Sarah, recently booked a through the online system at the Arbor Hill West Hill branch for a Sunday afternoon. And the process was so easy and painless and smooth. And so that was really nice as a scheduling experience.
So in lieu of reporting a specific Albany library engagement for December, I did a lot of domestic traveling the past month. And so I always like to check out a lot of different library branches when I travel. And something I just thought was interesting that I wanted to share with the group, or just the library generally. I saw at the Nashville, Tennessee main library branch, and in their children's section specifically is where it's located. But I think you could, sort of consider other locations for it. They have what they call a sensory room, and it's a sort of dedicated space for, younger patrons or folks that, may need to self-regulate or recharge. And they have that sort of like committed space, to take care of themselves with their caregiver or whomever, and you can check it out from the staff there. And so just as we, consider the special populations that we serve, and perhaps, evaluate our branches facility like room utilization, or in some of our bigger branches, I just thought that was an interesting opportunity. And we obviously have DEIA initiatives and goals in our plan. So I just wanted to share that as sort of food for thought, and something that I found like a really lovely addition to that particular branch. I don't know if it is available at other branches, since I only checked out the central location, but thought that was an interesting and valuable resource at the library there offered.
I thought it was just so cool that my friend Allison Williams was recognized. She wrote a book, and it was down at the How. She's a local author from Albany. So How really gave her the space, and her book is on display down there. So that was really nice. It was really nice to see the time. Really nice. That the library supports the local artists. Anyone else? I'd like to recognize that Trustee West, let the minutes reflect that Trustee West has joined us. As I said, I was right on time, 15 minutes.
I'll give a brief overview of the Audit and Finance Committee meeting. We sort of had two principal tasks that we accomplished that evening. The first being reviewing our committee description, sort of what our subset is tasked, our sort of charge as that group. And then we also reviewed the fiscal year 24-25 modification, which we will discuss later in this meeting under new business.
It's not on the agenda, but can I do a UHLS update? So this will be quick. I attended my first Upper Hudson meeting last week, and I did orientation a little bit ago. So the things that we may have heard or will hear but that I want to bring to folks' attention is that Tim, who is the current executive director, there's a search committee ongoing for that, as well as they're actively involved on February 5th of 2025 is Library Advocacy Day. If anyone is interested in going advocating for libraries. And they talked a bit, and I'm sure that Andrew is going to cover it in the UHLS digital report, but last year was the first time that the Overdrive had over 1 million downloads. So the is growing, and 2024 had a 15.6% increase in usage. So that was, I thought, a good thing for us to be aware of. And they're also working on developing to provide to library staff, Andrew and Melanie, not like us, but on controversial programs and how to, deal with media and public addressing controversial things. So I also thought that was worthwhile. That's it.
Thank you. Also, I would just want to add that Upper Hudson is a great resource. We are required to complete 2 hours of training for the library. It's not it's a requirement. It's the law. So if you want to go on their website, they also have Mid Hudson. I found that they really have very good content with Mid Hudson. It's very interesting about library and all of the intricate parts of the library. So, take advantage. It's January now, so you have plenty of time to get 2 hours. As we mentioned, we executive committee met on November the 26th. We weren't able to report because we weren't here in December, but it was a discussion to revise the dates of our RFP for council. The term went from 3 years. The current council will continue services without interruption until the new RFP is answered, which we should be getting those proposals. The date is January 17th. We made a recommendation to the full board to change that date from December 20th to January 17th. So they'll be going to Erica, and then she would forward those to myself and to the executive committee. The notices are going to be placed or are placed in the business review. It's on the APL website, the Times Union, the legal notices, and also the New York State Bar Association.
I just have a question. It's Trustee Marlowe.
Yes.
And I think we might have gone over this, but I just need to refresh my memory. So the executive committee goes over the RFPs, and then do you bring a recommendation to the full board at the next board meeting, or do we just go by who the executive committee selects?
No, we have a discussion. As you said, we'll make a recommendation to the full board and then have a discussion regarding that selection.
Okay, and that will be at the February board meeting?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, does anyone have any upcoming meetings that they would like to share? Committee meetings? Yes.
So nominating committee, we established we're going to be meeting on the first Tuesday of every month. So we'll have an update when we come in up until the election. The next meeting will be the first Tuesday in February. And did I write that down? I didn't write down the date. So it'll be the 4th, and that meeting will be here in Washington Ave, well, over in the smaller room. We're hoping for future meetings at Plain Hills. And we are a nominating committee thing. We're starting a little bit later than we started last year, but this year Trustee Robinson and I have been through this process before. Director Nicolay has been through the process before, as well as Melanie and the rest of the library staff who have been through it a million times. So we should be, I think, in good shape starting in February to bring stuff to the board and get rolling on promoting the election.
Audit and Finance has a meeting scheduled for Tuesday, January 28th, for purposes of discussing the financial 25-26 budget draft, as well as the 5-year financial plan. That will be at 5 p.m. Here at Washington Avenue.
Thank you. Any other committees? Let the director report.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and review the report about December. I'm not going to do 2 months worth. I figure you probably have had time to review the November report as well. So first off, I want to give a shout out to our Programs and Partnerships Department for planning the first ever Arabic English bilingual story time at APL. And we also are really proud of the launch of our Albany Symphony Orchestra performance passes, which have already gone out as many times as I think they can go. They could have gone out so far. So they've been an instant hit. And I thought you would be interested to know what other passes we added in 2024. So the Mount, which is Edith Wharton's home in Lenox, the Thomas, by the way, they have a really cool night light show during the holiday season. FYI, the Thomas Cole National Historic Site in Catskill. And this program it continues to be popular. It continues to grow in popularity. And happily, the attention that we got through a Times Union article piqued the interest of the executive director of the Egg. So we're going to be meeting with the Egg about potentially introducing passes for the Egg performances. I'm not sure exactly what that might look like. We're just having an exploratory meeting at this point, but that's a really exciting prospect. I hope it leads to more venues as part of our pass program, because I think that's super cool. In terms of outreach activities, I did want to mention that I am part of the Upper Hudson Library System Executive Director Search Committee. It consists of, I'm the representative from the Directors Association of Upper Hudson, and there are other, I think 4 or 5 other trustees from other Upper Hudson libraries who are part of this committee and who are members of the board of Upper Hudson. And in preparation for this process, I went around and met with some of my peers, some of my fellow directors from smaller libraries to get a sense of what they are looking for in an executive director of Upper Hudson. So that process has begun. It's completely confidential, and I'm excited to be part of it. Under Friends and Foundation news, Friends and Foundation are kind of rethinking their organizational documents. And so in this moment of transition for them, where some of their members have stepped back and they're sort of at a core team right now, they're looking at transferring all of their files and documentation from what was essentially started as a personal folder where everything lived to a more professionalized workplace, Google Workplace, which is a free option for 501c3s. So that's an administrative step, and in some ways not that exciting, but I think it is actually a really great move for them, and it professionalizes their organization even more. Also, the Friends and Foundation received an unrestricted $20,000 gift from the David and Candace Weir Foundation. So that's fantastic. That is going to go to great use. And I look forward to working with the Friends and Foundation to figuring out how that could be used. And in the meantime, they are going to invest it, as they've done with lots of other funds that are being held for future use. So those funds are going to grow, and I'm going to skip the safety report because you basically got it from Matt a little bit earlier. It is worth noting, as he points out in the first bullet there, that 10 of the incidents that happened in December were for 911 calls and 8 were for non-incidents or informational. And that's usually stuff like, a beer can was found in one of the aisles or, something that's a little bit after the fact that maybe the facilities team uncovers or, it still needs to be written up as an incident. We still want to note it, but we can kind of move on. And it doesn't impact us too much. So any questions about that section while we have Matt here? In terms of statistics, and I do want to point out that this is a bigger, well, actually, I'll save this for our statistics portion of the meeting because there's a lot here, and I also want to cover some of the exciting digital content CERC news that Trustee Masinski alluded to earlier. In terms of featured programs, I do want to highlight that for January, which is of course the month where we highlight Black history, Black culture. We have several Martin Luther King Jr. Themed programs, and we also have some exciting talks planned and a virtual author talk screening of unpacking a history of systemic racism in the American education system. That should be fantastic. And I'm hopefully going to be able to walk in the MLK Day walk that takes place annually in Albany. And yeah, so lots to look forward to there. I also invited you all to the WMHT Indie Lens pop-up film series. We're hosting a screening with WMHT called Free for All, the Public Library on January 25th, which is a Saturday. And that's all about public libraries and what they do for communities. Under community engagement, Rebecca and Meg Kelly, who are our programs and partnerships librarians, attended the RISE Job Resource Fair on December 4th. And I also wanted to highlight the fact that our prison art show, which was untitled Art from Behind Bars, ended up attracting over 130 visitors throughout the course of that show, which is really cool and shows that this is a viable space for public art to be shown. And it was also an opportunity for us to kind of give birth to our volunteer program in a sense. We had to put out a call for volunteers, and our head of community engagement had to schedule them all, work with them all, vet them all. And then, now we have all of those wonderful volunteers on our Rolodex to call on for future volunteer opportunities. So that's a really good outcome in addition to the fact that it was just a popular show. I also want to mention in relationship to programs and partnerships that for the first time, I think ever, we've been able to table at the annual tree lighting at City Hall, as well as a Toys for Tots event at Stephen and Harriet Myers Middle School and the Sheridan Hollow Holiday Party, which led to engagement with combined 300 people. And that's a pretty solid outreach number for us. I also want to go through a couple of highlights from branch services. At Arbor Hill West Hill, we held my first book club program for 4 to 8-year-olds, and that has been drawing a pretty good audience. And that's a direct outcome of the survey, the community surveys that we did, where we heard the clear call for additional middle grade book club programs. And so our staff have been hard at work planning and developing and launching new book clubs, new programming that speaks to that call. And I'll talk about that a little bit more in the quarterly update for the strategic plan. At Bach, we continue to see great attendance at our community art events, which are hands-on, another response to the call for hands-on and craft programs. At Delaware, we're actually welcoming a new branch manager. We hired internally for this position, Nina Koski, who is a really wonderful librarian. She worked here for, I want to say, almost 2 years. And she hired her as the new branch librarian at Delaware, and I think she's going to do a great job. So congrats to her. At Howe, again, several craft programs for children and families during December, including a salt dough ornament making class, which was popular. And adults also had an opportunity to be crafty with some ornament programs and a hot cocoa jar program. At North, the book club known as well, actually, I think it's a book club for kids. It's just listed here as a book club, but I know it's an after school book club. And oh, actually, no, that would not be the after school book club because they read Murder on the Orient Express, which is definitely not a children's book. So my bad. But they are hosting in conjunction with North Albany Middle School an after school book club for kids. So that's good news out of North. It's not necessarily listed here, but that's something I wanted to share also. At Pine Hills, we actually did something really innovative. We hosted a holiday bookstore experience where we turned the small meeting room into a bookshop for 3 days. I think one of the trustees had attended, maybe Trustee Barnum, I don't remember, but oh, okay. Oh,
But I
okay.
like the idea.
Well, plenty of people did attend, and they basically just put holiday books out on display and had hot cocoa and cookies for folks, and it was a great boost for collection circulation. So nice move on their part. Maybe we'll repeat it next year. And at Washington Avenue, we have circulated a whole lot of hotspots. Our new hotspot fleet launched in November, and they have basically all gone out. And some have come back, but some have not. So we're going to be continuing to evaluate that program. We really can't just keep on adding hotspots if all they're going to do is disappear and never come back. That's not necessarily where the cost is. The cost is in the staff time it takes to then order new hotspots, process new hotspots, turn off the service as soon as we learn that a hotspot is missing, turn on a service when we restart a hotspot. So it's a lot of time and effort, effort. And that has to be considered as we continue to evaluate that hotspot program. So I will have more news hopefully next month about the status of that program, but I'm a little concerned about it. Finally, under collection management services, we had 86 patrons register for Libby Access. So those are new patrons who have discovered our online resources just in 1 month. And we also added 2 new research databases through a new contract with Newsbank, Heritage Hub and Black Life in America. And we also continue to support America's News, which has expanded patron access to New York and national newspapers, sort of in and of itself. So any questions about the December report?
Just about volunteers, what would be the best way for somebody who wants to volunteer to get involved now?
I would have them contact our volunteer coordinator. Well, actually, our volunteer coordinator is Aubrey Slatter-Price, who is a library assistant who works under Rebecca Lubin. You could also just start with Rebecca Lubin. That would be fine.
Trustee West, I have 2 questions, for the volunteers. You mentioned that that the library was working with organizations, and solidifying collaborations. How are those organizations selected, and are they, do, does the library reach out to them? Is there a spreadsheet, or do the organizations reach out to the library, or is it a mix of both?
I was referring to the volunteers that we asked for the Prisoners Legal Art exhibit. Those were just individuals who responded to the call. But as we continue to develop our volunteer program, Rebecca she's sort of continuously meeting with groups like RISE, USCRI. There's an organization that supports adults who are volunteering in organizations so that they can learn the experience of having a job. They're like transitioning into having a job one day. They might have some developmental delays or issues that they're facing. So she's also looking at that organization, but she's really the go-to in terms of, doing any kind of outreach to an organization that offers volunteer services. I know a lot of the corporations in Albany, like a lot of the banks will have volunteer teams that they're ready to send out, for an isolated need. And she's also considering how we could make use of those types of volunteers as well. So it's not just limited to, it's not limited to a certain set of organizations. It's really, we're inviting all kinds of interest at this point because we're getting ready to launch. We're developing a volunteer handbook and all of the things that we need to support such a program.
And I was just trying to link it back to the strategic plan and community partnerships and how to expand community partnerships, especially diverse community partnerships. So I just wanted to know how it tied back into that.
Mhm. And I'll definitely cover more about that in the quarterly update we're delivering to you later. So this is actually an opportunity where we look at the entire calendar year, and Melanie was really helpful in putting together this list of ways in which our calendar year 2024 statistics revealed how we're doing. So I'll go through those for you. And this is also covered in the statistics section of the executive director report. So overall, for year end 2024, we're up. We're up by 2%, which is not something to necessarily, it's 2%. It's not a negative number, so that's great. But we still have a lot of work to do to boost circulation in the wake of the pandemic. And I know that even saying the word pandemic sounds so, so 2020, 2021, and here we are in 2025, but we're still recovering. And so are a lot of libraries across Upper Hudson. And so, we're happy with that increase. We're not going to go back. So we're only going to go forward. Our door counts are kind of the more encouraging number. They were up overall for the year by 4%. Branches where we saw the largest increases were Pine Hills and Arbor Hill West Hill. And I really have to credit the team at Arbor Hill West Hill for all of the great programming that they're doing and developing, because I think that has definitely had an effect on the door counts at Arbor Hill West Hill. Programming was up overall by 26%, with Pine Hills and Arbor Hill West Hill leading the way, again with 80% and 70% increases in attendance over 2023. Our computer use was up overall by 26%, again with sort of a highlight for Arbor Hill West Hill, where computer use was almost twice what it was last year. Let's see, incidents down 36% from last month and 11% from December of last year. So that's the good news. Annually, we saw a net increase over 2023, but we're very optimistic with, now that we have a head of public safety, now that we have some better practices in place across staff, and opportunities to really put our skills to use in terms of de-escalation, communication, all the things Matt was talking about. I'm hopeful. I'm cautiously optimistic that our incidents will continue to trend down. Certainly the violent incidents, hopefully. And finally, Upper Hudson ran some numbers for circulation for the whole system. And that's kind of what you'll see later in the next report, I should say. But print materials, AV materials, and e-content were part of this report. And our physical AV materials really have really decreased in popularity, let's say, with a 68% decrease since before the pandemic. A lot of that has to do with audiobooks on CD, which have totally tanked in light of the fact that cars don't even come with CD players anymore. And DVDs are less popular because of all the streaming services out there. So that's not necessarily a huge surprise. Print circulation, however, with a 10% decrease, that's the part that makes my heart sink. That's the part that
It keeps going out.
Oh, well, as long as we're not losing our remote attendees. Okay. Okay.
We're still here.
Okay. It's a relief. So yeah, the 10% decrease in physical or print circulation is not great, but that's where we pick up a lot in e-content circs. And again, we'll kind of get into that next.
Any questions regarding the statistics? Wait, quarterly, Upper Hudson Digital.
Yeah, so this is a quarterly report that Upper Hudson generates, and it occurred to me that you might like to see it because it compares Albany Public Library's use to Upper Hudson as a whole. And I would really highlight the fact that at Albany Public Library, from October to December, we picked up a 5% increase overall in our digital content circulation as compared with a 3% increase across the entire system, which is, it certainly puts us in a nice light in terms of our use and our trajectory. It also underscores the need to invest more in e-content resources. So that's something that will come up as we look ahead to 2026, fiscal year 2025-26. I would also point out that I think the Hoopla chart on page 2 is particularly, stark. When you look at the navy blue line that represents 2024 compared to the growth in 2023, I mean, we're seeing at least a 25% increase across the whole year, which is exciting month to month. It's exciting. And then the final page really speaks to the trend that I referenced in the statistics report for APL that I just delivered, which is that digital versus physical, we're seeing a lot more growth on the digital side than on the physical side. So we'll continue to look at that and see how we can invest more in digital and boost our physical collections. I mean, the thing about digital collections is that you can grow them infinitely. Physical collections are limited to our physical spaces. So it's something, it's just an interesting calibration. I don't know where it's going to plateau. I feel like we could put our entire materials budget into digital content and it would just, the community would just suck it up and it would circulate, which is kind of incredible. But in a lot of cases, it's about reducing those wait times on the hot titles. And I'm sure you'll remember that our head of CMS came and spoke about that particular balance that we have to strike. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see where that goes in the future. Any questions about the Upper Hudson report?
Thank you for including it.
I will continue to include it.
Thank you. And now for the items.
Yes, there is a memo I included about special legislative grants. Basically, Senator Neil Breslin has pledged $20,000 to Albany Public Library, with $10,000 to be used for enhancing library services at the Delaware branch and another $10,000 at the Arbor Hill West Hill branch. And that is incredible. It's unexpected. We don't count on these special legislative funds, but when they come, it's really exciting and positive, and it makes us feel good. So I'm working with staff to strategize and see how we can apply those funds for improvements at both of those locations. We haven't yet had even our initial meeting because this news just came, but I'm very much looking forward to hearing from the branch manager at Delaware and the branch manager at Arbor Hill West Hill to see how we can improve the physical spaces, the programming, wherever it needs to go. And I'm excited to look at that with the folks who work at those branches and probably know very well what good use that those funds could be put to. Any questions or comments about that? And we'll look for an opportunity to invite Senator Breslin, even though he'll be out of office at that time, but it'll still be important to acknowledge that that he directed these funds to us and invite him to be part of whatever celebration we have to launch whatever we do with these funds, as well as Senator Fahey at this point.
Thank you. You have a question? Oh. All right, so unfinished business, our quarterly reports, our quarterly evaluations for the board. Again, the ones that we did receive, it was concerns about our time. But I think that we've kind of improved on those uh, quite a bit. Also, it was a nice uh constructive criticism of myself in regards to the Robert Rules of Order. So I thank you for bringing that to my attention as far as if when to make a motion, which I'm very aware of, and that it allowed me to continue reading my book that I purchased. So I thank you for bringing that to my attention again. Anything that I can do to improve is certainly welcome. So I think those were the two things that what we have. Also we discussed, I think the last time, if we started getting bogged down in the weeds, tabling that discussion for another time. So we're on track for that. So any other comment in regards to the quarterly evaluation? I think one is probably coming up soon to do again. They just keep coming every 3 months. So with that, I'll move on to the budget modification.
Okay, yes, we did present this modification to the Finance Committee back in November. That time I kind of went through each line of the budget, even the unmodified ones, and just talk through them all. I won't do that here. Just focus on the ones that we did modify. So starting with the revenue section, you can see we increased the New York State grants line by about $7,000. That corresponds with Central Library and the ERO funding that we received through UHLS. Those amounts were confirmed. And so we did increase that line accordingly. The Central Library portion of that corresponds with about a $4,800 increase to the Central Library expense line. And the ERO portion, about $1,700, corresponds with a portion of the increase to the digital content line. And actually, I skipped the tax levy section. I'll just touch on that quickly. The $45,000 modification, the decrease to the branch improvement plan portion of the tax levy, that's due to accrued interest credits. And that was the actual amount that we collected from the taxpayers for the fiscal 25 budget. And that also corresponds with a $45,000 reduction to the debt service expense. So going back to revenue, the increase to the other grants line, almost $12,000 there. That's due to 3 programming grants that we've received that will be or have already been expensed this fiscal year. 2 were through the Friends and Foundation, and the other was from the Arts Center of the Capital Region. And they both correspond with a portion of the increase to the programming expense line. We also increased the fees and sales projection by $5,000. That's just based on where we're currently at in the year. And looking at last fiscal year, we ended just under $55,000. And the interest income line as well, we increased based on the current projections. We actually earned more than $165,000 in fiscal 24. So we thought 150,000 would be a safe number to use here. And again, we've touched on this in prior meetings, but that fairly large increase is due to the new investment strategy that Sean and I have been pursuing with our investment banker. And so those modifications in combination with the lesser modifications we made to the expenditures resulted in about a 25% decrease in the amount of fund balance we are projecting that we may have to use to cover the difference between expenditures and revenue. So that's about $142,000 difference. And moving on to expenditures, start with the payroll and related costs section. We did reduce the full-time salaries line. That was due to several vacancies that were present within the staffing model towards the beginning of the fiscal year. They've since been filled, but it still allowed us to reduce full-time salaries budgets by about $105,000. The New York State retirement system line, that actually represents the actual payment that we did make in December to the retirement system. That line, they give us an estimate early on for budgeting purposes. That estimate usually changes when they actually issue the bill. Usually it's in our favor. It's not always the case. In this case, it was in our favor by about $16,000. The adjustment to the payroll taxes processing fees line, that corresponds directly with the reduction to the full-time salaries line. Payroll taxes FICA is equal to 7.65% of salary expense. So that number is derived directly from our projected salary expense. Employee benefits, we did increase that budget by $50,000. Our health insurance costs did increase fairly significantly with our new plan that took effect in December, and also with some of the full-time vacancies that were filled. More full-time employees means more insurance expense that we are liable for. Moving on to the next section, the only line we touched was North Albany services, and that was really a result of a discussion that occurred during the committee meeting. There is an agreement with the school district regarding rent payments for our occupying the North Albany space, but there is some question as to the status of that agreement. And my understanding is that it's still being looked at by council. So that we did increase that line to about $33,000, which is what the contract stipulates as a placeholder. But again, that the nature of that agreement is still under review. Moving on to the next section, materials and services. I touched on the increases to the central library and digital content line. The remainder of the increase to the digital content line, was simply because of the amount we've actually spent this year already and the increased demand we're seeing for digital content. We decided it would be warranted to increase that by an additional $20,000. And the admin and miscellaneous section, we increased office and library supplies by $10,000. A lot of that is due to increased costs and usage of toner across all the branches. We did have to increase the bank fees line by $14,000, and that really is less to do with bank fees and more to do with credit card processing fees, which have increased dramatically over the last couple of years. We also increased the postage line slightly, just by $1,000. Library mail rates continue to go up, and we have actually been seeing fairly high interlibrary loan activity. We did reduce the tax cert payment line to 0 from 50,000. We actually haven't been billed for tax cert expenses in nearly 2 years at this point. 2-3 years ago, we actually did have 6-figure tax cert expenses, but we haven't been billed in 2 years. We did not think it would be warranted to leave that as is. So we did reduce that to 0. And the liability insurance line, we did increase that by $5,000. Our umbrella insurance policy and our cyber insurance policy as well, both increased, particularly the umbrella insurance, it increased pretty dramatically. So we did need to increase that line a bit. And IT, we left alone based on our meetings with the IT manager. We didn't identify any issues at the time in the meeting suggesting that we would need to adjust the budget significantly. And so again, the result of all this is that we're projecting less reliance on fund balance usage. It still projects over $400,000 difference between revenue and expenses. But it's still an improvement over the original budget, which projected just over 561,000. So if any of you have any questions on any of the lines that were modified or the unmodified lines, you know, please feel free. Otherwise, that's all I have.
Thank you. Any discussion?
Yes, I did have a couple questions. Adam, could you speak more to the new investment strategy? Could you go more into detail about that?
Sure. So in years past, historically, what was done is we would hold on to a lot of our cash and only invest a smaller percentage of it, oftentimes for long-term investments, which wouldn't produce consistent yields. So you'd see year to year, the interest income line would vary drastically year to year. Sometimes when a long-term investment would mature, you'd have a six-figure interest income line that year. Other years, there were years where it was under, I mean, it was four figures some years. So what Sean and I have started doing is pursuing more short-term investments, investing more of our cash. So we don't have as much cash on hand at any given time, but because we're really just pursuing these short-term investments, we're constantly seeing maturities, you know, every month at this point. And fortunately, the rates have been fairly good as of late. So, you know, our yields have been very good, and we started doing it this way, sort of midway through the last fiscal year, and we had a pretty favorable result with over $165,000 in that line. The rates were better then than they are now, but still with a full year of this strategy, I do think so long as you know, we have enough in our fund balance to be able to have enough cash on hand at any given time to continue to pursue these investments consistently. I do think seeing having six-figure numbers in that budget line going forward is quite possible. So yeah, I mean, basically the difference is we didn't invest as much cash previously and focus on longer term investments. Now we're investing more cash in short term investments. So we're seeing consistent yields, and you know, it's producing a more favorable result.
Sure. So what are we investing in? And is the portfolio something that is accessible to trustees or the public? What are these investments in?
So you can see our investment policy is on the website under library policies. It's very straightforward. Treasury notes, CDs. I'm not sure if this would be available to the I would assume that it would be.
Yeah, it's definitely something we could share. There's no reason not to. I think is it KeyBank that we use?
Yeah, it's through KeyBank. It's KeyBank Capital Markets. Statement from them every month, just like any other bank account. And yeah, it's all recommended by a investment banker we work with, he's familiar with our policies. He knows the sorts of things we can invest in. So
Right. So I was just wondering, maybe I think it cut out a little bit on what were like mostly the investments in.
so yeah, it's mostly treasury notes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's there's no risk of us losing our principal or anything like that. It's not like these are there's virtually no risk associated with these investments as long as we, on our end, we just need to make sure that we have enough cash on hand at any given time to make payroll and pay our bills. If we needed to pull out of an investment early, that could create risk, but we're not even anywhere close to needing to do that. And
Oh,
we're very careful about only investing as much as we can afford at any given time throughout the year.
okay. Thank you. I just had just two other quick questions. Could you speak a little bit? I think I may have maybe misunderstood what you were saying, but payroll went down, but taxes went up. So the payroll for the part-time salaries that went down, but the payroll taxes and processing fees went up, or
No, actually,
or the benefits went up, something went up. I missed what you were saying in that part. Not sure if it's a connection or not, but
there may have been a misunderstanding there. So we reduced the full-time salaries budget by $105,000. And in a corresponding move, we reduced the payroll tax and processing fees budget by about $8,000 because that line directly corresponds with salary expense. The payroll taxes we're liable for are equal to 7.65% of our salary expense paid out. So a reduction to our salaries line results in a reduction to the payroll taxes line.
okay. So I must be looking at employee benefits is what
The employee benefits,
is
yeah.
what went up in.
Right, that's a separate matter. That really pertains to health insurance costs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and one last question. With the North Albany, with the contract still being under review, is the 33,000 something that has already been paid, or is that something that's just put aside in lieu of the validity of the contract? And this has been something that's been going on like back and forth for years. So when do you think will there be an answer in reference to our obligation to pay for North Albany?
Trustee guys, it's the latter. It's a holding place for that money. And I don't have an estimated time when I'll be able to tell you one way or the other. But we are actively looking into it with the city school district.
So what exactly, I know about this situation. It's been going back and forth for quite a while. So do you know what exactly is the holdup in reference to the contract or validity of it or expiration of it? What
Yeah.
exactly is the holdup here with this North Albany?
I can tell you it has to do with the construction project that North Albany Middle School conducted to make the new space, both for North Albany branch and for the school. So there was a provision in the contract that basically said that the city school district would recalibrate the square footage and the associated rent and any utilities or whatever else is included in the agreement once the space was occupied again. And as things happen, that reevaluation I don't think has taken place. So that's what's being looked at right now.
And so the school district has to do the reevaluation.
That's my understanding.
And they haven't given any time frame or anything like that in reference to when that would take place, or
No, they have not. They have not. No, I think if I had to guess, I would guess it kind of fell through the cracks. And it's going to be one of those things where they're either going to, like, I shouldn't even speak to how it's going to go. I don't know.
So previously with the Y there, our rent was going to the Y, right?
No,
That's correct,
What-
actually. We were
Oh,
paying the
Yeah.
Albany YMCA directly.
my bad. Sorry.
You're right. So that's why I said this issue has been going on for quite a long time. So now since this, is that playing a role in what's happening here, Adam? I mean, because you're familiar with this as well. I mean, you've been here for a while. So is this something that is muddying the waters with this North Albany situation, or?
I can't really speak to that. Once the school district took over the space,
Mhm.
you know, I wasn't privy to the discussion surrounding our agreement with them. So I don't have too much information on this, unfortunately.
So I think what
Mhm.
the issue was is that when it was, you're right, trustee Gauze, it was going back they had to actually go all the way back to when the housing authority
Right, when Jennings Drive,
actually
right,
gave it to, right, when they gave it to the Y, they had to actually go back to that. And then when the
Right.
school district recalibrated, they had to, it was trying to figure out the space that they're expanding into, was that space that belonged to the Y, or was that space? So that's really what the issue is. And I think that what uh and then to couple with that, you've had changes of administration at the school district,
right,
not in council, but in administration,
right.
so that, through the years, things get lost in translation, and it's just taking a while to sift through everything and figure out what's going to happen. And I'm glad that we have the money and we're holding it. So in case they're like, okay, this is what you're going to pay, it's there. But I suspect, and I think that what you were trying to avoid saying is that there may not be a cost at all, but you don't know that until they actually hammer everything out.
Right. I have some other comments associated with that, but I'm going to reserve my comments. So, but no, thank you. And thank you, Adam, for answering my questions.
Sure.
I have just a brief question. Can you just, and I think that my understanding is limited of the tax payments, the $50,000. You said that there hadn't been anything in it in over a couple of years, and then when there was something, it was in the six figures. Is that something that would ever be retroactive? Is that something that, okay, now it pops up 2 years later and it's retroactive, or they've compounded years and now it's a bigger sum, and that could have been why it wasn't a six figures previously?
So the first instance of a tax cert bill, I believe, was 3-4 years ago. It occurs when a property is reassessed at a lower valuation, and the district will retroactively allow the owner of that property to recoup some of the taxes they had paid. And the library, portion of that, they passed that bill on to us. And so the first couple of years that we saw these bills, we did see invoices that covered properties, and it did go back a couple of years to, so yeah, there was some retroactive billing that was occurring there. These were mostly not residential properties, as I recall. I believe they were mostly hotels, churches, properties that for one reason or another. I mean, the tax certiorari, to define it would, we'd be here another 45 minutes, but But yes, I do believe there is the potential for some retroactive billing. And, certainly I wouldn't be surprised if we see these bills again, but, like I said, it's been 2 years now. So I don't know if, I can only speculate as to why we received 6 figures worth of bills within the first couple of years of having received these bills, and then no bills at all since then. It's still a fairly new expense that we've taken on, so it's hard for me to know if this is going to be a recurring expense, or if this was the bills we saw a couple of years ago were the highest that they'll ever be. So again, unfortunately, I don't have some real solid information on what to expect going forward. But that's the most I can say, is that we haven't been billed in almost 2 years.
Understood. I was just thinking that because there's a possibility of it being retroactive, that perhaps we may not want to zero that line out.
And if I may, sorry, Adam, not to interrupt, but I would have to do a little bit of research to check the statute of limitations on a tax certiorari Article 7 proceeding. But generally what I do know is that, say, if a taxpayer, whether that be a resident or a business owner, brings a tax cert proceeding against the city of Albany to have their assessment reduced, typically what'll happen if that proceeding is settled, or if the court rules in the taxpayer's favor, the library may owe some taxes for that year, and it may go back a couple prior tax years, because typically what happens with these tax proceedings is that you have to bring a new proceeding each year. So the years start to pile up. So it could be like 3 or 4 years that come under review. They typically are ongoing, and you typically settle a bunch of them at once, which is why you see some payments for prior tax years. So I hope that helps a little bit with this discussion.
Yeah, that's good information. Thank you, Mackenzie.
Just on that too, I'm wondering, because we're talking about modifying this year's budget, that it seems safe to take that out for the rest of this year, but maybe we have something for next budget year still.
Certainly, that line is going to remain in the budget. It's still something that I think we need to consider going forward, even if we haven't been billed recently. So I don't see that line going away anytime soon. It's just, based on these last few years, been kind of an unpredictable line.
Yeah, so just to be clear, and I won't belabor it, I understand that you're saying we're keeping the line item, but that's not the same as what I was saying. I was saying that we should not zero it out. So you can have the line item, and a line item would be 0. I'm saying keeping the line item at the 50,000 that's there. That's my recommendation.
Yeah, I mean, either way, I mean, even if we left it at 0 in the event that we did get a bill, it's not as if we don't have the funds to make the payment. On paper, yes, it would appear that we've gone over budget, but either way, I mean, it's certainly not anything I would have any kind of issue with leaving that $50,000 in there.
Thank you. Any other discussion before we move on to the quarterly strategic plan update? All right. Right. If I need, I'm just trying to word. May I, I'm requesting a motion to adopt the recommendation of the Audit and Finance Committee.
I'll move to adopt the recommendation of the Audit and Finance Committee. Trustee Masinsky.
Anyone second? Oh, I'm sorry. That's right. That's where I was reading second, that the first was the recommendation. All in favor? All in favor? Aye. All, any abstentions? Did you say, are you in favor, abstention? Okay. On the, virtual, can we get a, in each individual, your vote, please?
Aye.
I'm sorry, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, this mute is not working out for me. Yes, yeah, I'm in favor.
That was
Aye.
trustee Robinson.
Yep. I think we're all trying to talk at the same time, so it gets cut off.
Trustee Gauze? Oh, that was trustee Gauze. Oh, sorry, I thought that was trustee.
Trustee Gauze?
Okay, yes. Okay, one abstention. Seven, 6 in favor. You. No, 5.
I'm sorry, I had one.
Seven. 7 and 8. Yes. So 8. Yeah, 8 in favor. But trustee Gauze, yes.
Can you guys hear me? This is.
Yes. Trustee Gauze?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
I have a couple more questions. I don't want to go too much into it. Make me an abstention, please.
So 2 abstentions.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Uh, 6, 7 in favor. The motion carries. Right. Quarterly strategic plan update.
All right, we're going to transition to a PowerPoint. I thought it would be a little bit more interesting to present you with some of our accomplishments under each of the plan goals. This document that I put into board docs, it's very thorough and it is a good picture of what we're working on and doing, but it's also really, really dense. And I feel like I fall asleep reading it out loud, even though there's a lot of good stuff in here. So I'm going to shift to the PowerPoint and hopefully that'll give you a good picture of some of our accomplishments.
Can you all see the screen on virtual?
Yes.
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 Great. Okay.
Yeah.
So first, just want to go over our strategic plan goals that were established at the beginning of the plan: community engagement, workforce, diversity, equity, inclusion, and access, and sustainability. We continue to work with these 4 goals, and each year we develop tactics that help us achieve or work towards achieving these goals. Really, the work is very much ongoing. So I'm going to first call out some highlights under the community engagement goal. We are expanding the Children's World Languages collections that we established last year by 25% this fiscal year. So thanks to a different grant that was special legislative funding from actually Senator Breslin, we are able to spread this funding over 5 years. And so we're growing this collection very mindfully over the course of those 5 years. And we're looking at some of the usage, and hopefully I'll have some usage numbers for the Children's World Languages collection next month for you, because we will have had some good time with it. But nevertheless, we're going to continue to grow this collection by 25% this fiscal year. Our programs and partnerships department is truly responding to the programs that the community is asking to see at various locations of APL. And I'm proud of the work that they're doing to develop programs. I mentioned before the My First Book Club at Arbor Hill, which started in the end of September of 2024. In the local history arena, we're looking ahead, and you'll see this in your January, February program guides, but we have Tales of Albany coming with, which is a local history book club that's starting up in January. I think the first book is the Women of Pearl Street, the Ladies of Pearl Street. The exact title is escaping me. It's definitely in the program guide. We're also hosting a Zoom series with the Adirondack Museum with a focus on local history. And we're offering and introducing a sensory-friendly story time and play at the Washington Avenue branch in January. Another local history program we're offering in February is Albany Amore, which we're doing with Discover Albany, and has to do with romance and love stories of Albany. So that should be fun for the month of February. And we're also launching a Spring into Reading challenge because some of the feedback we got was that people wanted to see more reading challenges, not just limited to the summertime. So we're cooking up a reading challenge for the spring that will lead into summer reading. So that's some programs and partnerships work that's going on. I also want to call out the work of some of our personnel. You heard from Matt earlier. Matt is establishing strong connections with our community partners in social services and law enforcement. He called out Joseph's House. We're also meeting with DSS Commissioner next week to talk about some of the ways we can improve our relationship with DSS. They're across the street from Washington Avenue. And we see a lot of folks come over from the DSS office with various needs. And we're hoping to help them understand what we can and can't do and the referrals that we can make. Our head of community engagement, Rebecca Lubin, is participating in this year's Capital Region Chambers Leadership Capital Region, which is the program that I participated in last year. This is a great program for Rebecca to participate in because she is in a position that reaches out to a lot of groups in Albany that, this can only help her understand the landscape in Albany better and be a stronger community engagement department head. We also hired for Rebecca's department the part-time library assistant for community engagement, and Aubrey is doing a great job of creating a volunteer manual and getting ready to launch that volunteer program that I spoke about earlier. We're also training digital navigators next week. So 2 digital navigators and I believe 2 interns are being trained. And that's the pipeline. That's the jobs pipeline for APL. So we're optimistic that we can give those interns and digital navigators a great experience here, help them understand how to take civil service tests and recruit them for jobs at APL one day. We continue to tackle our Upper Hudson Library System Equity Challenge action items, and I want to point out some of what we've been doing along those lines. We're working on the reciprocal lending agreement with UAlbany. So we're really hoping to remove the barriers that exist between UAlbany students who could benefit from borrowing from our collections, but maybe don't understand how it works or don't. And we want to make it easier for them to borrow from APL. And we also want to make that connection between our patrons and UAlbany's collections because they do have collections that could be of value to the wider community. We're working with Albany Housing Authority to connect residents with library services. Rebecca Lubin and I are going out to Albany Housing Authority locations next month to do a 2-part series about the library, about services that we provide, as well as digital content in particular. And that's something we're working on with support from the Friends and Foundation as well. And it will involve an exciting e-reader connection opportunity. So looking forward to that. We're reviewing the ADA checklist. Our facilities manager is looking at all of our facilities and looking at places where we can improve. One place that I can call out right now is the ramp that leads into the back of Washington Avenue from the Elk Street entrance. That ramp is not technically ADA compliant. So that's an area that we will want to look at for future DLD construction projects. And it's just one example. Hopefully not one of many that we identify. Most of our branches in terms of, the bathroom access and access to the building, we're in compliance. Our elevators are usually working great. There are times when we have to tune them up and make adjustments as happened at Howe, but we are almost all the time in compliance with access to our facilities. And that's a good thing. We're also collaborating with Upper Hudson to promote the books by mail delivery service. I don't know how many of you are aware that we actually have a books by mail delivery service through Upper Hudson, but they support that for homebound folks, for people who can't make it in for any reason. Usually it has to do with maybe a temporary physical disability or something of that nature. So we're really looking to promote that program. We have flyers out at all of our desks about books by mail, and looking forward to seeing what happens with that program. Under our workforce goal, we are continuing to work with City Civil Service Commission to make our clerk position non-competitive. And that is very much in play. That's not a pipe dream anymore. So that's that's real progress for us. It's going to be a game changer for that recruitment process. Our staff engagement survey, which just closed, saw the highest participation ever in the 3 years that we've been running a staff engagement survey. We had 86 responses this year, over I think 75 from last year and 73 from the year before. So that's a nice gain, and we have a lot to work with, and I'll be reporting out to you about that staff engagement survey next month. We're also drafting a 5-year financial plan that accounts for projected salary increases. Obviously, we cannot know what those salary increases are going to be yet because there's a negotiation that's coming up, but we have to project some kind of increase that accounts for cost of living or for inflation or what have you. So we're going to be working with audit and finance on that. And of course, you'll hear more about that as we go through the budget process in January and February.
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but for those of us who are virtual, the presentation is not advancing for some reason.
Okay.
Don't know why.
Is that something we can look at? Because I'm seeing.
But I
Sorry
hear
about that.
on your end it's advancing.
Yeah, it's definitely, yes, it is.
Sorry, yeah. Oops.
You could, that would be better. Yeah.
Yep. Go that way. How about now? Are you seeing the diversity, equity, inclusion, and access goal highlights?
Yes.
Great. Okay. This is not going to be in presentation mode, but it's better than the alternative. And we'll work on fixing this issue for next time. So this is actually the biggest area in terms of items that we've been able to add from the Upper Hudson Library Equity Challenge. So you'll see some of those items a little bit later, but I want to cover some of the things that we're doing outside of the Equity Challenge. We're advocating for the continuation of digital inclusion programs for the city of Albany, and that's an effort that we take part in with the Friends and Foundation because the Keep Albany Connected program, of course, is the one that you all know of. That's the Wi-Fi in the housing and parks locations. That the future of that program is not totally certain at this point because of the grant that they had that ran out, and now we're kind of in a place where we're transitioning to some new funding sources. But this is something that a lot of banks and institutions feel that the municipality should take up. And I don't disagree. I think that that's probably where the wind is blowing eventually. I don't think Wi-Fi is something that communities are going to see as a bonus, but as an essential ingredient of life. So I think, and I hope that it will be treated as a utility in the future. And we're going to continue advocating for that with the city and with anyone who will listen. We're using the newly launched Central Library funded language line translation service to share information and resources with those folks in our community whose first language is not English. And our staff have already started using that service. And I'm happy to say that so far the languages that we've used are Russian and French, which is kind of interesting. Just to know that we've got Russian and French speaking patrons who've benefited from our help and from this language line translation service. We're also, of course, committed to completing the Equity Challenge by December 2026, which is the deadline for the challenge to be completed. And it really does overlap so nicely with our diversity, equity, inclusion, and access goal. So even with our new strategic plan, whatever form that takes, we'll be able to carry forward with these Equity Challenge items. We implemented annual staff training on workplace diversity, on microaggressions, and on cultural competency, and that those trainings take place for 100% of our staff. We have a training platform called Reliant, which some of you might be familiar with, I don't know, but that's the platform that we're using now, and it allows our, especially our part-time workers, to take advantage of this training and to do this training in the time that they can, because it's very hard to get all of us together for one synchronous training time. We also conducted a book discussion selection 12-month audit and found that 46% of our book discussions for adults and 30% of our youth book discussions featured diverse authors. So those are numbers that we will continue to look at, improve, work on. This is not a one-time audit. This is an every year audit. So we're going to continue to make advances in that area and highlight books and authors that feature diverse characters and are by diverse authors. We're also developing an inclusive language guide for our marketing materials in the library. And lastly, looking at what we can do to help people who have allergies and have gluten allergies or don't eat meat enjoy our programming that features food. So we're trying to be mindful about what we offer in terms of refreshments at some of these events where we host food. We don't always serve food at events, but when we do, we want to be mindful and considerate of folks who have various allergies or preferences. As much as we can, anyway. This is just some continued equity challenge items. I wanted to mention that we shifted our story time, our Saturday story time at Howe from 10:30 to 11:30, hoping to bring in some new audiences. And we have seen a small gain in those audiences since we made that change. So that shows us that the 10:30 time doesn't work for everyone universally. Not all parents can make that 10:30 time. So offering it at this alternate time at Howe has boosted attendance. And I'm very happy to say that, because Howe continues to be a focus. That continues to be a place where we want to put more energy into outreach, into connecting the community with the library. We also planned some programs celebrating non-dominant cultures. So we did a Day of the Dead program, Dia de los Muertos. I don't have the best Spanish accent pronunciation. Hispanic Heritage Month, we provided an artist workshop that was led by someone of the Hispanic community. And we celebrated Pride Month with help from the Gay Men's Choir, which is always a fun thing to do. We also held the first in a series of bilingual story times. I did mention this in my report, but we're going to build on that. This is just the beginning of the series. We saw such a nice attendance, and we've got plenty of other languages to feature. I think we're going to focus on Farsi next. So that's going to be our next bilingual story time language. And under sustainability, we implemented a solar credit program through Joe for Sun. And if you haven't heard of Joe for Sun, you're living under a rock, because they've been very good about pushing out their program to every organization who will listen. And so I'm happy to say that we were one of those organizations. We're going to hopefully be able to report out on those credits at future meetings. The program is pretty new still for us, so we'll see what the gains are there. I don't expect this to be huge money, but it's money we didn't have before. So it's always nice. We're also developing a new 5-year financial plan for our fiscal sustainability, and you'll be seeing that 5-year plan in the not too distant future. Finally, improving workplace safety for all staff is a really important move to ease burnout and boost our staff retention. Hiring Matt was part of that. It is not, Matt is not magical. He is not the perfect solution for our safety issues, but he certainly has helped. And I'm already seeing in the early results of the staff engagement survey, positive responses from staff who appreciate the fact that he's here, appreciate his attention, his active attention to all of the branches, not just Washington Avenue, all of the branches. And we continue to really just be so happy that he's part of our team and working hard to help us be the safest place that we can be for our workers and for our patrons. So that brings us to the end of this presentation. We're also closing in on the final year of our strategic plan. So we're going to continue working on all of these goals, strengthening library services, and I'm just really proud of the staff who are engaged in this work and who've been responding to community needs as we've learned about them. So I would invite any questions you have, and thank you for listening. I'll post the slideshow in board docs as well for the record. And for for the listening audience at home who, I'm sorry that the slides were not advancing earlier in the presentation. So they will be available on board docs.
I just had a comment that I think that hiring Matt just gives the staff, that people are listening, and that people care. So especially him going out and meeting with all of the staff as well as the branch managers, and also, as he said in his words, being a fly on the wall, just sitting back observing and then making his comments. And so they can have a real conversation about the incidents, and they play a part and a role in what solutions that they can come up with. So I think that was very good.
Thank you. I agree.
Any other questions or comments in regards to the strategic update plan? Any public comment? No need for executive session. Or someone will make a motion to adjourn.
I move, this is trustee West, I move that we adjourn at 7:43 p.m.
I second the motion.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Virtual? That was trustee Marlowe, trustee Robinson. Okay, trustee Gauze is gone. Okay, let the record reflect that she left. All right. So all in favor, adjourned, all passed. Thank you. Thank you for your patience and understanding of our meeting. Oh, she might have dropped off.
Fix the minutes.
Right, that she,
Maybe she
yeah,
dropped
she
off.
dropped off.